The Krolthar had been conquerors for 8,000 years. They had destroyed 200 civilizations. They had never known defeat. That changed in 47 minutes. Captain Suho watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the Velian's memory. The Krolthar blockade fleet had 50 capital ships, massive things bristling with weapons. They hung in orbit around the Havran homeworld like vultures. The human fleet hit them from 6 different angles at once. "Fire all forward batteries," Suho commanded. His voice was calm. He had practiced this moment in his mind 10,000 times. The Velian's memory unleashed hell. Particle beams tore through Krolthar's shields like paper. Missile swarms overwhelmed their point defenses. Railgun slugs moving at relativistic speeds punched through armor plating. The Krolthar tried to respond, but their ships were too slow, too bulky. They had been designed to intimidate, not to fight an enemy that matched their technology. Humanity's vessels were smaller, faster, built by a species that understood pack tactics and coordinated warfare. Lieutenant Bora grinned as her weapons found their marks. "Target destroyed. Moving to the next one." "The Krolthar are trying to regroup," reported the tactical officer. "They're forming a defensive sphere." General Kyung-soo's voice came through the fleet-wide channel. "Don't let them. Fighter wings, break their formation. Capital ships, concentrate fire on their flagship." 300 human fighters swarmed the Krolthar formation like angry hornets. They were too small for the enemy's massive weapons to target effectively. Each fighter carried precision missiles that targeted weak points in the Krolthar armor. Engines, shield generators. Weapon mounts. The Krolthar flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Sword of Dominion, tried to retreat. It never made it. 15 human destroyers hit it simultaneously from different vectors. Its shields collapsed. Its hull breached. It broke apart in a cascade of explosions. "Enemy flagship destroyed," Suho reported. "Remaining vessels are scattering." "Let them run," Kyung-soo said. "But mark their trajectories. We'll hunt them down later." The battle was over. 50 Krolthar ships had been destroyed or disabled. 0 human casualties. On the surface of the Havran homeworld, millions of aliens looked up at their sky and saw their executioners fleeing. They didn't understand what had happened. They didn't know who had saved them. Not yet. Suho ordered the fleet to establish orbit. Then he opened a communication channel to the planet below. Dr. Hana had provided the translation protocols before they left Earth. "People of Havran," he said in their language. "My name is Captain Suho of Earth. We are humans. We came because we heard your distress call. The Krolthar will not harm you today, or any day after. You are under our protection now." There was a long silence. Then the Havran responded. "Earth? We have never heard of Earth. Why do you help us?" Suho touched the data chip around his neck. The Velian voices. "Because someone should have helped the Velians," he said quietly. "And no one came. We swore that would never happen again." The Havran didn't understand the reference, but they understood the sincerity in his voice. The next weeks were chaotic. The Havran Confederacy consisted of 12 worlds spread across 5 star systems. The Krolthar had attacked 3 of them simultaneously. Human forces split up to defend all 3 planets while hunting down the scattered enemy ships. It was during one of these cleanup operations that humanity suffered its first casualty. Commander Junho was leading a destroyer squadron when they encountered a damaged Krolthar cruiser hiding behind a moon. The enemy ship was crippled but still dangerous. It fired everything it had in a final desperate attack. Junho's ship, the shield bearer, took the full force of the blast. 17 crew members died instantly. Junho himself lasted long enough to evacuate the survivors before the ship's reactor went critical. His last words, transmitted to the fleet, were simple. "Worth it. Tell the Velians we remembered." The funeral was broadcast back to Earth. Billions watched as Commander Junho's name was added to the memorial wall, right beside the Velian names. The first human to die protecting another species. He wouldn't be the last, but the Havran were grateful. Their government sent a delegation to meet with General Kyung-soo on the Velian's memory. The Havran looked almost human, with 2 arms, 2 legs, and faces that could smile. But their skin was green and covered in fine scales, and their eyes were golden and vertical slitted like a cat's. "We owe you a debt we can never repay," said Counselor Varesh, the leader of their delegation. "You came from nowhere to save us. You asked for nothing in return. We don't understand why." Kyung-soo regarded them coldly. He was not a warm man, but he was honest. We watched a species die once, he said. We were too far away and too primitive to help. It took us 100 years to reach you. We won't waste that time again. What do you want from us? Varesh asked carefully. Nothing. Rebuild your worlds. Live in peace. If you're attacked again, call us. We'll come. Varesh seemed stunned. You want no tribute? No territory? No. Then what kind of conquerors are you? Kyung-soo allowed himself a small smile. We're not conquerors. We're guardians. There's a difference. But not everyone in the galaxy saw it that way. Word of humanity's intervention spread fast. The Confederation of Free Worlds, a group of 70 neutral species, sent observers to the Havrin system. They wanted to know who these humans were and what they really wanted. Ambassador Yuna met with them. She was the newest in a long line of diplomats trained by Nari's doctrine. She was 43 years old, patient, and skilled at navigating alien politics. You claim to want nothing, said one of the observers, a being that looked like a floating crystal, but you command a massive military fleet. You possess technology that matches the Krolthar. How do we know you won't become the next threat? Yuna had prepared for this question. Because we wrote it into our laws. Our doctrine of protective intervention. We only act when innocents are being slaughtered. We don't conquer. We don't colonize. We defend. Words are easy, said another observer, a creature made of living metal. Actions prove truth. Then watch our actions, Yuna replied. Watch what we do here. Watch what we do next. Judge us by our deeds, not our words. The observers agreed to watch. Yuna hoped humanity wouldn't disappoint them. Meanwhile, Captain Suho and his crew worked to help the Havrin rebuild. Human engineers shared construction technology. Human medics treated the wounded. Human soldiers trained Havrin defense forces in case the Krolthar returned. It was during this reconstruction that Suho met a Havrin child named Kellen. The boy was 8 years old and had lost his parents in the bombardment. He approached Suho one day in the refugee camp. Are you really from another star? Kellen asked in broken English. The translation software wasn't perfect yet. Yes, Suho said gently. From a world called Earth. Why did you come? Suho knelt down to the boy's level. He pulled out his data chip and held it up. Because a long time ago people like you died and no one helped them. I carry their voices with me so I never forget. Your people won't die. Not while we're here. Kellen stared at the chip with wide golden eyes. Can I hear them? Suho hesitated, then nodded. He played a recording. Felian voices singing, talking, laughing. The sounds of a species that no longer existed. Kellen listened in silence. When the recording ended, he looked up at Suho. They sound happy, he said. They were. Once. I'll remember them too, Kellen promised. So they're not forgotten? Suho felt something break inside his chest. He pulled the boy into a hug. Kellen held him tight. But the peace didn't last. 3 months after the initial battle, sensors detected a massive Krolthar fleet approaching the Havrin system. Not 50 ships this time. 300. The Krolthar had gone back to their empire, gathered reinforcements, and returned for revenge. General Kyung-soo studied the sensor readings and made a decision. Recall all ships. Prepare for battle. This is going to be bad. Captain Suho stood on the bridge of the Valian's memory and looked at the approaching enemy fleet. 300 ships against humanity's 200, and the humans were light years from reinforcements. Lieutenant Bora checked her weapons one last time. We're outnumbered. We've been outnumbered before, Suho replied. Not like this. Then we'll just have to be better. He opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Captain Suho. The Krolthar are coming back. They think they can intimidate us with numbers. They think we'll run. He paused. They're wrong. We didn't come here to run. We came here to make sure no species suffers like the Velians did. Today we prove we meant it. Today we show the galaxy what humanity stands for. Across the fleet, crews prepared for battle. Engineers pushed reactors to maximum output. Pilots strapped into fighters. Gunners loaded weapons on the Havrin homeworld. Kellen looked up at the sky and whispered a prayer to the Velian voices. The Krolthar fleet emerged from FTL travel in a wall of steel and hate. Humanity met them with fire. 100 years is a long time to stay angry, but humanity managed. The first generation built the foundations. The second generation built the ships. The third generation would fly them into war. Engineer Jiwan was 32 years old when she joined Project Retribution. She was brilliant with machines and terrible with people. She preferred the company of engines and circuits to the chaos of human conversation, but she understood the mission. She had been 11 years old when the Velian broadcasts ended. She remembered crying herself to sleep for weeks. Now she stood in an asteroid field beyond Mars, watching the construction of humanity's secret weapon, the Ghost Fleet. "How many ships do we have operational?" asked Colonel Hyunsu, Admiral Daeho's grandson. He was 32, same age as Jiwan, and commanded the first squadron of FTL-capable fighters. 47 capital ships, Jiwan replied, checking her datapad. 112 destroyers, 308 fighters, and the flagship. They both looked up at the massive vessel hanging in the darkness, the Velian's memory. It was 3 kilometers long, armed with weapons that could crack a planet, and powered by an engine that could fold space itself. "My grandfather would have loved to see this," Hyunsu said quietly. Admiral Daeho had died 15 years ago. He never lived to see the fleet completed, but his dream survived him. "He did see it," Jiwan said, in his mind. "That's enough. The training never stopped. Every day thousands of pilots practiced combat maneuvers in simulators. They studied the Krultar tactics from the old broadcasts. They learned to think like their enemy, to predict their movements, to exploit their weaknesses. The Krultar relied on overwhelming firepower and intimidation. They attacked in straight lines with massive vessels, expecting their enemies to break and run. But humanity was designing a different kind of warfare, fast, precise, coordinated, like a pack of wolves against a bear. Captain Suho was one of the best pilots in the fleet. He was 41 years old and had spent his entire adult life preparing for a war that might never come. He kept a data chip around his neck. On it were recordings of every Velian voice from the original broadcast. Millions of voices. He listened to them every night before sleep. "Why do you torture yourself?" his weapons officer, Lieutenant Bora, asked him once. "To remember why we're here," Suho replied. "To remember who we're fighting for." Bora was 26 and fierce. Her great-grandmother had watched the Velian genocide as a child. The trauma had passed down through the generations like inherited scars. Bora had joined the military the day she turned 18. She was the best shot in the fleet. "When we finally meet the Krulthar," she said, "I'm going to make them regret ever broadcasting their crimes." Suho smiled grimly. "Get in line." Ambassador Nari grew old watching humanity transform. She was now 93 years old, still sharp, still working. She had helped write the doctrine of protective intervention, the rules that would govern humanity's actions in space. The rules were simple. Humanity would not conquer. They would not claim territory. They would not demand tribute or slaves. They would only intervene when innocent lives were threatened, and they would leave as soon as the threat was eliminated. "People keep asking me if we're sure about this," Nari told a group of young diplomats. "They ask if we're ready to be the galaxy's police force, to carry that burden forever." She looked at them each in turn. "I tell them we don't have a choice. We saw evil and did nothing once before. We were 1,200 years too late. We won't make that mistake again." The young diplomats nodded, understanding the weight of their future responsibilities. By year 50, humanity had made first contact with 3 alien species, not in person but through intercepted communications. The Havran Confederacy, a loose alliance of trading worlds. The Mathari Collective, a hive-mind species that spoke in mathematical equations. The Sorrow Chorus, beings made of crystallized sound. None of them knew about Earth. None of them knew humanity existed. Jiwan, now 87 years old and head engineer of the entire Ghost Fleet, developed translation protocols for all 3 languages. When humanity finally revealed themselves, they would be able to communicate, to explain, to offer friendship instead of fear. "What if they don't want our help?" her assistant asked. Jiwan shrugged. "Then we leave them alone. We're not the Krulthar. We don't force anything on anyone." But in her heart, she hoped they would understand. She hoped they would see humanity as allies, not threats. The breakthrough in faster-than-light travel came in year 63. Dr. Seokjin, a physicist who had dedicated his entire career to the problem, finally cracked the mathematics. Space could be folded, but not the way they had been trying. It required exotic matter, generated by specialized reactors contained in fields that had to be precisely calibrated. It was dangerous. The first 3 test ships exploded. The 4th one vanished completely, lost in folded space. The 5th one worked. Captain Minho, now 92 years old, watched the test from Earth. He had been too old to pilot the test vessels himself, but his students succeeded where he could not. He wept with joy when the ship returned safely. "We can do it," he whispered. "We can actually do it." The military buildup accelerated. More ships, more weapons, more training. Every human child grew up knowing the story of the Velians. It was taught in schools alongside mathematics and literature. The blue-skinned artists who died while the universe watched. The promise humanity made to never let it happen again. Some people questioned whether it was healthy to raise generations on a diet of rage and grief. Whether children should be taught to prepare for war from birth. Ambassador Nari, now 130 years old thanks to life extension treatments, had an answer for those critics. "We're not teaching them to love war," she said. "We're teaching them to love justice. There's a difference." By year 90, the Ghost Fleet was ready. 200 warships hidden in asteroid bases and dark space, crewed by the best humanity had to offer. General Kyung-soo commanded the entire force. He was 55 years old, a tactical genius, cold and precise in his thinking. "We're ready," he reported to the United Earth Council. "Give us a target and we'll end them." But there was no target. The Krolthar were 1,200 light-years away, and there had been no new broadcasts of genocide. Maybe they had stopped. Maybe they had moved to a different part of the galaxy. Maybe they were extinct. Or maybe they were just killing more quietly. The answer came in year 102, a distress signal, detected by the deep space arrays. Not a broadcast this time, a desperate encrypted plea for help, sent on frequencies the sender hoped someone, somewhere might be listening on. Dr. Yunji's successor, a young woman named Hana, worked for 36 hours straight to decode the message. When she finally succeeded, she immediately contacted General Kyung-soo. "It's the Havrin Confederacy," she said, her voice shaking. "The Krolthar are attacking them. Right now." Kyung-soo didn't hesitate. "How far?" 47 light-years from Earth. "Scramble the fleet. We leave in 12 hours. The United Earth Council met in emergency session. For 100 years they had prepared for this moment. Now that it was here, some hesitated. Some wondered if they were truly ready. Some feared what would happen if they lost. The vote took 12 hours. When it finished, the result was unanimous. Humanity would intervene. Captain Suho stood on the bridge of the Velian's memory as the fleet prepared to depart. Around him, 200 ships powered their engines. Across Earth, billions watched on screens, holding their breath. "This is it," Lieutenant Bora said beside him. "Everything we've prepared for." Suho touched the data chip around his neck. "The Velian voices. The innocent dead for them," he said quietly. "We fly for them." "For them," Bora echoed. The fleet launched. Space folded around them, reality bending to human will and mathematics. They vanished from Earth's sensors, crossing 47 light-years in an instant of folded time. When they arrived at the Havrin system 6 months later, the Krolthar were already there. Blockade fleets surrounded 3 inhabited planets. Surface bombardments had already begun. General Kyung-soo gave the order from the command ship. "All vessels battle formation. Target the blockade fleet. Show them what humanity thinks of genocide." The Ghost Fleet attacked. The Krolthar never saw them coming. The signal came on a Tuesday morning. Dr. Yunji was drinking her 3rd coffee of the day when the computers at the Deep Space Communications Array started screaming. Every monitor in the facility lit up at once. Every speaker crackled with static that slowly resolved into something else. Something terrible. "Get Director Daeho on the line," she said, her hands already shaking. "Get everyone on the line." Within 6 hours, every screen on Earth was showing the same thing. A world burning, a species dying. The aliens in the broadcast looked almost peaceful in their final moments. They had blue skin that shimmered like water, large eyes that reflected light like mirrors, and delicate hands with 6 fingers. They built their cities from crystal and grew their food in floating gardens. Their children played in streets that curved like rivers. The Velians were a civilization of artists and dreamers. They had no armies. They had no weapons. They had lived in peace for 10,000 years. Then the Krolthar came. The invaders were massive creatures, twice the size of humans, with armored skin and faces like predatory birds. Their ships blotted out the Velian sun. Their weapons turned entire cities into glass. But they did not simply destroy. They recorded everything. They broadcast their conquest across the stars like a warning, or perhaps like entertainment. Yunji worked day and night to translate the Velian language. It was musical, filled with harmonics that human ears could barely detect, but the meaning was clear enough. The Velians were pleading, begging, praying to gods and ancestors in the empty void of space for someone, anyone, to help them. No one came. Admiral Deho watched the broadcast from his office at the United Earth Defense Force headquarters. He was 58 years old, with gray hair and scars from the Asian conflict of 2165. He had seen war. He had seen death. But this was different. How far away are they? He asked. The Kepler 442 system. Yunji's voice came through the speaker. 1,200 light-years from Earth. Deho closed his eyes. So this happened 1,200 years ago. Yes, sir. We are watching history. Ancient, terrible history. The broadcast continued for 3 weeks. The Krolthar were methodical in their extermination. They destroyed the Velian cities one by one, starting with the smallest settlements and working their way to the capitals. They showed no mercy to the young or the old. They took no prisoners. They simply erased. On the 18th day, a young Velian scientist managed to override the Krolthar broadcast system. Her name was something that translated roughly as Whisper of Morning. She appeared on screens across Earth, her blue face streaked with tears that glowed faintly in the darkness. If anyone can hear this, she said in her singing language, please know that we existed. Please know that we loved. Please know that we tried to be good. Then the transmission cut to static. It never returned. The world stopped turning. In Seoul, millions gathered in the streets holding candles. In New York, the entire city went silent for 1 hour. In Lagos, Cairo, Moscow, São Paulo, people wept for aliens they had never met. For the first time in human history, every nation on Earth agreed on something. This could never happen again. Captain Minho was 29 years old and had never expected to be important. He flew experimental aircraft for the military, testing new designs and pushing engines to their limits. He was good at his job, but not famous, not special. Then they called him to a meeting with Admiral Deho. Captain, the Admiral said, how would you like to fly the fastest ship humanity has ever built? Minho blinked. Sir? We are going to build a fleet, Deho continued. A fleet capable of crossing the stars. A fleet strong enough to challenge any empire that thinks genocide is acceptable. He leaned forward. But first, we need to prove it is possible. We need someone to test our first faster-than-light drive. How fast are we talking, sir? If it works, you could reach the Velian homeworld in 6 months instead of 12 centuries. Minho felt his heart race. When do we start? The United Nations called an emergency session. Every nation sent representatives. Every broadcast network carried the proceedings live. The debate lasted for 47 hours. Some argued that humanity had its own problems to solve. Poverty, climate damage, political tensions. Why spend resources on a threat that was 1,200 light-years away? Others argued the opposite. The Krolthar had broadcast their genocide deliberately. They wanted other species to know what they were capable of. They wanted the galaxy to live in fear. If humanity did nothing, they were accepting a universe where the strong could murder the weak without consequence. Ambassador Nari stood before the assembly on the final day of debate. She was 45 years old and had spent her career trying to prevent wars on Earth. Now she spoke about preventing wars among the stars. We have seen evil, she said simply. We cannot unsee it. We have heard the cries of the innocent. We cannot unhear them. The question before us is not whether we can afford to act. The question is whether we can afford not to. The vote was unanimous. Project Retribution began the next morning. Every major corporation on Earth contributed resources. Every university redirected research. Every nation opened its military facilities. The goal was clear: develop faster-than-light travel, energy weapons, and defensive systems capable of matching or exceeding Krolthar technology. But there was another goal, quieter, but just as important. Humanity would not become the Krolthar. They would not conquer. They would not enslave. They would protect. Dr. Yunji led the Xenolinguistics division. If humanity was going to meet other alien species, they needed to communicate peacefully. She studied every fragment of alien language they could detect from deep space signals. 23 different languages, 23 species who might need help someday. Admiral Deho addressed the world one final time before the real work began. He stood before a memorial wall where they had inscribed every Velian name they could recover from the broadcasts. Millions of names, millions of lives. We are 1,200 years too late to save them, he said, his voice rough with emotion. But I swear to you, to them and to every innocent species in this galaxy, we will ensure no one ever suffers this fate again. We will build ships. We will train warriors. We will cross the stars. And when we find evil, we will answer with fire and steel. The crowd roared its approval. In orbit above Earth, construction began on the first shipyard. It would take decades to complete. It would take billions of credits. It would require sacrifices from every human alive, but they would do it. Because they had seen what happens when good people do nothing, because they had heard Whisper of Morning's final words, because humanity had finally found its purpose among the stars, not to conquer, to protect, not to rule, to defend, not to forget, to remember the Velians were gone, but their deaths would not be meaningless. Humanity would make sure of that. The battle lasted 9 hours. It was the longest 9 hours of humanity's military history. The Kroltar came in waves, trying to overwhelm the human fleet with sheer numbers. They learned from their first defeat. Their ships moved in coordinated patterns, covering each other's weaknesses. They focused fire on individual human vessels, trying to destroy them one by one. Captain Suho fought with everything he had. The Velian's memory took hit after hit, shields flaring with each impact. The ship shuddered. Alarms blared. Crew members died at their stations. Shield generators are at 20%, reported the engineering officer. We can't take much more. Reroute power from life support, Suho ordered. We only need to breathe if we survive. Lieutenant Bora kept firing, her face grim with concentration. Running low on missiles. Switching to energy weapons. Across the fleet, similar conversations were happening. Ships were damaged. Supplies were running low. People were dying, but the humans didn't break. The turning point came when General Kyungsoo made a desperate decision. He ordered 15 destroyers to perform a suicide run on the Kroltar command ship. The crews knew it was a one-way trip. They volunteered anyway. The destroyers accelerated to maximum speed, shields at full power, weapons firing continuously. The Kroltar tried to stop them, pouring fire into their path. 10 destroyers were destroyed before reaching their target, but 5 made it through. They rammed the Kroltar command ship at relativistic speeds. The explosion was visible from the planet's surface. The command ship and the 5 human destroyers simply ceased to exist, converted into pure energy. 700 people, human and Kroltar both, gone in an instant. But it worked. Without their command ship, the Kroltar fleet lost coordination. Ships started making independent decisions, breaking formation, exposing weaknesses. All vessels concentrate fire, Kyungsoo ordered. His voice was hoarse from shouting orders for 9 hours. Don't let them regroup. The human fleet pressed their advantage. Damaged ships that could barely fly threw themselves at the enemy. Fighter pilots with failing life support systems made final attack runs. Engineers kept weapons firing even as their ships fell apart around them. When it finally ended, both fleets were devastated. The Kroltar had lost over 200 ships. They retreated, jumping to FTL in scattered groups, running for their lives. Humanity had won, but the cost was terrible. 43 human ships destroyed. Another 70 damaged beyond repair. 8,000 crew members dead. 15,000 wounded. Captain Suho sat in his command chair, staring at the casualty reports. The Velian's memory had survived barely. The ship was held together by emergency force fields and prayers. Around him, the bridge crew worked in exhausted silence. Get me a channel to the Havran government, he said quietly. When Counselor Varesh appeared on the screen, Suho could see the alien was crying. Havran tears were silver and glowed faintly. You saved us again, Varesh said. At such terrible cost. That's the job, Suho replied. He was too tired to be diplomatic. We want to help. Let us send aid. Medical supplies, food, whatever you need. Suho started to refuse automatically, but then he paused. The Havran wanted to help. Maybe he should let them. Maybe that was part of building the alliance humanity needed. Thank you, he said finally. We accept. The aftermath was harder than the battle. Human medical teams set up field hospitals on the Havran homeworld. Medic Tejan worked 18-hour shifts treating casualties. He was 32 years old and had joined the medical corps because he wanted to save lives, not end them. But war didn't make those distinctions. "I have 3 critical patients and only enough medicine for 2, he told his supervisor, Dr. Mirai. "How do I choose?" Mirai looked at him with exhausted eyes. She was 55 and had seen too much death lately. "You do your best. That's all anyone can ask." Tejan made his choice. He saved the 2 he thought had the best chance of survival. The 3rd patient died while he worked on the others. Tejan cried for an hour after his shift ended. This was repeated across the fleet. Choices that shouldn't have to be made. Lives weighed against lives. The math of survival. The Havren helped where they could, but they were still recovering from their own trauma. Their economy was shattered. Their infrastructure was damaged. They needed years to rebuild, maybe decades, and humanity had promised to protect them during that time. "We need to leave at least 50 ships here," General Kyung-soo told the council back on Earth. "The Krulthar will return eventually. They always do." 50 ships, replied Counselor Park from Earth. "That's a quarter of our remaining fleet. What if someone else needs help? Then we'll be stretched thin." Kyung-soo's face was hard. "This is what we signed up for. Protection isn't cheap." The council approved the deployment. 50 human vessels would remain in Havren space indefinitely. Their crews would be rotated every 6 months, but the ships would stay. Captain Suho was one of those asked to stay. He agreed without hesitation. The Velian's memory would be repaired in orbit and serve as the flagship of the Havren Defense Fleet. But not everyone was happy with humanity's actions, and to the Confederation of Free Worlds called an emergency meeting. Their observers had watched the battle. They had seen the destruction. They had questions. Ambassador Yuna attended via hologram, standing in a chamber with representatives from 70 different species. Some looked like animals. Some looked like plants. Some looked like geometric shapes. Some defied description. "You claim to be protectors," said the crystal being, "but you brought war to this sector. Before you arrived, the Krulthar had never come here." Yuna felt her temper rise but kept her voice calm. "The Krulthar were already here. They were killing the Havren. We stopped them. And now you occupy Havren space with a military fleet," said the metal creature. "How is that different from conquest?" "We're here at their invitation. Ask the Havren if they want us to leave. They'll tell you no, for now. But what happens in 10 years, 20? When the Havren grow dependent on your protection? When they can't defend themselves because you've made them weak?" That hit harder because it was a legitimate concern. Yuna had worried about the same thing. "We're training Havren Defense Forces," she said. "We're sharing technology. Our goal is to make them strong enough to defend themselves, then leave." "Promises," the crystal being said dismissively. "The Krulthar made promises too at first." Yuna looked directly at the being. "Then judge us by our actions, not our words. Watch what we do. If we betray the Havren, if we become conquerors, then you have every right to oppose us. But give us the chance to prove we're different. The Confederation didn't vote to support humanity, but they didn't vote to oppose them either. They would keep watching." Back on the Velian's memory, Suho dealt with his own doubts. He visited the refugee camps regularly, trying to help where he could. One day he met a Havren elder named Torvesh. The old alien had lived through the entire war and had strong opinions. "You humans confuse me," Torvesh said, sitting on a piece of rubble that used to be someone's home. "You fight like demons. You kill without hesitation, but then you weep for your enemies and help rebuild what you destroyed." "We didn't destroy this," Suho said, gesturing at the ruined city. "The Krulthar did, but you brought them back. That second fleet came because you embarrassed them. If you hadn't interfered, maybe they would have taken what they wanted and left." Suho felt cold. "You think we should have let them kill you?" "No," Torvesh sighed. "But I think you should understand that protection has a price, and sometimes the protected pay it in blood." Suho had no answer for that. Lieutenant Bora struggled too. She had killed so many Krulthar during the battles. She was good at it, too good. She started having nightmares about the faces in the enemy ships. Did they have families? Did they have children? "They were trying to commit genocide," Medic Tejan told her one night in the ship's mess hall. "You stopped them. That's not murder." "Then why does it feel like it?" Bora asked. "Because you're human. We feel guilt. That's what makes us different from the Krulthar." But Bora wasn't sure that was enough. The Krulthar adapted. Intelligence reports showed they were developing new weapons specifically designed to counter human tactics. Faster ships, better shields, more powerful weapons. They're learning from us, General Kyung-soo said during a strategy meeting. Every battle teaches them our weaknesses. Then we need to teach them a lesson they can't recover from, said Admiral Sulgi, commander of the Earth's Second Fleet. She was 43 years old and had lost her husband and both her children in the Second Battle of Havren. She wanted revenge. Be careful, Kyung-soo warned. Revenge makes bad strategy. Then call it justice. The divide in humanity was growing. Some wanted to take the war to the Krulthar homeworld, to end the threat forever. Others argued that would make humanity the aggressors, no different from the enemy they fought. Back on Earth, protests erupted. Some demanded the fleet come home. Others demanded more ships be built and sent out. The unity that followed the Velian broadcast was fracturing under the weight of real war. Captain Suho stood on the observation deck of the Velian's memory and looked down at the Havren homeworld. From orbit, you couldn't see the damage. The planet looked peaceful, beautiful. Young Kellen had sent him a message yesterday. The boy was doing well, adopted by a new family. 2 years of war changed everything. Humanity fought the Krulthar across 12 star systems. They saved the Mithari Collective, a species of hive minds that communicated through pheromones. They protected the Sorrow Chorus, beings made of crystallized sound who sang their gratitude in frequencies that made humans weep. They defended the remnant clans, a warrior culture that immediately asked to join humanity's fight. With each battle, more species joined the alliance, not because they feared humanity, but because they trusted them. Because humanity kept its promises. Because humans died to protect aliens they had never met. But the cost kept rising. By the end of Year 2, humanity had lost 118 ships. 23,000 dead, 40,000 wounded. The Ghost Fleet was a ghost of its former self, held together by repairs and desperation. And still the Krulthar came. They're not trying to win anymore, General Kyung-soo said during a strategy meeting. They're trying to bleed us dry. Make protection too expensive. Force us to abandon our allies. Admiral Sulgi slammed her fist on the table. Her grief had hardened into something cold and sharp. Then we need to end this. Take the war to them. Hit their homeworld. The room went silent. Captain Suho spoke carefully. That's an invasion, not protection. That crosses every line we drew. They crossed the line first, Sulgi shot back. When they committed genocide. When they forced us into this war. We didn't ask for this, but we're finishing it. Ambassador Yuna attended the meeting remotely. She looked older than her 51 years. If we invade their homeworld, we become conquerors. The Confederation will turn against us. Everything we built will collapse. Then what do you suggest? Sulgi demanded. We keep fighting forever? Keep dying until there's no one left? We find their leaders, Kyung-soo said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. We don't invade. We don't occupy. We go to Krulthara Prime, find whoever gives the orders and capture them, put them on trial for genocide, show the galaxy that justice exists. And if they resist? Suho asked. Then we use enough force to make them stop resisting. But no more than that. It was a thin line. Maybe too thin. But it was better than becoming what they fought against. The United Earth Council debated for 3 days. In the end, they voted to approve the operation. 500 ships would be assembled, half human and half allied species. They would jump to Krulthara Prime, neutralize the planetary defenses, and capture the Krulthar leadership. Then they would leave. If we stay even 1 day longer than necessary, the council chair said, we become occupiers. We become the new Krulthar. The fleet assembled at a staging point in neutral space. 500 warships from 15 different species. Humans, Havren, Mithari, Sorrow Chorus, remnant clans, and 10 others. Species that had been strangers 2 years ago now fought side by side. Captain Suho walked through the ship's corridors, visiting crew members before the battle. He found Lieutenant Bora in the weapons bay running final checks on the missile systems. You ready for this? He asked. Bora looked at him with tired eyes. She had aged a decade in 2 years. I'm ready for it to be over. After this, it will be. One way or another. You really believe that? Suho touched the data chip around his neck. The Velian voices. He had listened to them every night for 2 years. I have to. Private Jinwoo was 19 years old, fresh from training, terrified. This would be his first real battle. He had grown up hearing stories about the Valian genocide. He had joined the military to make a difference. Now he was about to invade an alien homeworld, and he wasn't sure if that was heroic or monstrous. "Scared?" asked Sergeant Borum, a veteran of 10 battles. "Yes," Jinwoo admitted. "Good. Fear keeps you alive. Just remember why we're here." "Why are we here?" Borum smiled grimly. "Because someone has to be. Might as well be us." The fleet jumped to FTL. Space folded around them. When they emerged, they were in orbit around Krolthara Prime. The planet was massive, 3 times Earth's size, with red continents and purple oceans. Cities covered entire hemispheres. Orbital stations ringed the planet like a crown, and protecting it all was the largest military fleet humanity had ever seen. 2,000 Krolthar warships. "Well," Captain Suho said calmly, "this is going to be interesting." The battle for Krolthara Prime lasted 9 days. It made every previous battle look like a skirmish. The Krolthar fought with the desperation of a species defending its homeworld. They threw everything they had at the invaders: warships, fighters, orbital platforms, surface-based weapons. The space around the planet became a graveyard of burning metal. But humanity had learned. 2 years of war had taught them every Krolthar tactic, every weakness, every mistake. And they had allies now, species with their own unique capabilities. The Mathari hive minds coordinated fleet movements with perfect precision. The Sorrow Chorus jammed enemy communications with disruptive frequencies. The remnant clans led boarding actions with savage efficiency, and humans did what humans did best: adapt, improvise, and refuse to quit. Admiral Silgi commanded the orbital assault. She had waited 2 years for this. For every ship she lost, she destroyed 3 enemy vessels. Her tactics were brutal but effective. "Ma'am, we're taking heavy casualties," her tactical officer reported. "I know," Silgi replied. "Keep pushing. We break them today or we don't go home." On day 4, a Krolthar cruiser suicide-bombed itself into a human destroyer. 200 people died instantly. Silgi watched it happen and didn't flinch, but Captain Suho did. He had known the destroyer's captain. They had trained together a lifetime ago. "How many more?" Lieutenant Bora asked quietly. "As many as it takes," Suho replied, but his voice shook. The breakthrough came on day 7. General Kyungsoo led a strike force through a gap in the planetary defenses. 50 ships, including the Velian's memory, punched through to the surface. They headed for the Imperial Citadel, the fortress where the Krolthar High Sovereign ruled. Surface defenses tore into them. Ships fell like burning rain. But the survivors kept going. Kyungsoo led a ground assault personally. He was 57 years old now. Too old to be fighting in armor, but he did it anyway. 500 soldiers, human and alien both, stormed the citadel. The Krolthar guards fought to the death. They were massive, powerful, bred for war. But they had never faced enemies this determined. Private Jinwoo killed his first Krolthar in a corridor deep in the citadel. The alien was huge, twice his size, covered in natural armor. It roared and charged. Jinwoo shot it 6 times before it fell. He stood over the body, shaking. He had killed a living being. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like murder. Then he heard crying. A small sound from a side room. Jinwoo investigated carefully. Inside he found a Krolthar child, maybe 5 years old, hiding behind furniture. The child looked up at him with terrified eyes. Jinwoo lowered his weapon. Hey, it's okay. I won't hurt you." The child didn't understand his words but recognized the tone. Slowly, carefully, Jinwoo holstered his gun and held out his hand. The child took it. General Kyungsoo found the High Sovereign in the throne room. The Krolthar leader was ancient, covered in scars from 1,000 battles, wearing armor made from the bones of defeated enemies. "You dare invade our sacred world?" The Sovereign roared. "We have conquered this sector for 8,000 years. We are eternal." "You're a murderer," Kyungsoo replied calmly, "and your reign ends today." The Sovereign laughed, a terrible sound. "You think you're different from us? You think your war is righteous? We were like you once, young, idealistic, protecting the weak. Then we learned the truth." "What truth?" "That the strong survive and the weak deserve extinction. That the universe rewards only power. That mercy is weakness and kindness is death." Kyungsoo aimed his weapon at the Sovereign. "Then you learned wrong." "Did I? Look at yourself, General. You invaded our world. You killed our people. You wage war across the stars. How are you different from us?" For a moment, Kyungsoo hesitated. The Sovereign's words hit deep. Hadn't Kyungsu done exactly what he accused the Krolthar of doing? Then he thought of the Valian voices. The innocent dead. The species saved because humans refused to look away. I'm different because when this is over, I'm leaving, Kyungsu said. I'm not conquering. I'm not enslaving. I'm stopping you and then going home. That's the difference. He fired. The shot was precise, disabling the Sovereign's armor and dropping the massive alien to its knees. Kyungsu's team swarmed forward, securing the prisoner. It's over, Kyungsu said into the fleet-wide channel. We have the Sovereign. Cease fire. I repeat, cease fire. The word spread across the battle. Slowly, incredibly, the fighting stopped. Krolthar ships stopped shooting. Human ships held fire. After 9 days of hell, silence fell. In the Citadel's corridors, Private Jinwoo still held the Krolthar child's hand. The child had stopped crying. Other soldiers found them there. What do we do with it? One soldier asked. Jinwoo looked at the frightened child. We keep our promise. We protect it. The other soldiers stared at him like he was crazy. Then one by one they lowered their weapons. The trial of the Krolthar High Sovereign and its military command happened on a neutral station, overseen by the Confederation of Free Worlds. Representatives from 70 species attended. The evidence was presented. The Valian genocide, the Havrian attacks, 200 civilizations destroyed over 8,000 years. The Sovereign showed no